Good evening, this is Jack from Charting the Market, and this is the pre-market webinar for the evening of Wednesday the 18th of June. Right, my disclaimer, I did this for educational purposes only. I'm here to share my technical analysis with you. I hope you can take some of what I'm doing, learn from it, transfer it to your own charts. I'm not here to issue trading signals. Right, after being delayed with the paperwork running, but I'm putting the paywall up at the end of the month. So the last free one is going to be on Sunday the 29th of June. All right, great. In that case, let's go straight to the markets. Okay, since we had this move up here and we have this little retracement here, I've been watching a possible head and shoulders that's forming here. Obviously, it's looking pretty good. Now, I was saying when I was laying out the bullish scenario last week that we might, in a post, that obviously there were a number of things that could cause a problem here. In this particular case, it's the ongoing war between Israel and Iraq, whether the Americans going to get involved, how high it's going to send oil, and so on and so forth. We'll come to oil, but in terms of the markets, this is quite a nice looking bear scenario, and I'm going to talk about where I think this might go. I'm only thinking in terms of a limited retracement here if we see one, but I am thinking we might see one. One of the reasons I'm thinking so was because the initial bullish window that I was talking about went basically into Monday has really ended. We've got the holiday, and basically we haven't got a strongly leaning bullish day until the end of June. But we do have. We've only got one strongly leaning bearish day, and that is on the 24th, Tuesday the 24th of June. But nonetheless, we've got a little window here that might lean bearish, and we've got a decent looking top and setup, and I'm thinking it may deliver. Now, if it does deliver, really what I'd be watching is first monthly pivot, but really the pattern target would be at this larger possible head and shoulder neckline, which I've got in the 58.12 area. Looking at NQ, I'd be looking, the target would be actually slightly below the monthly pivot here. The main obvious area to get to would be this area here around 21,000, but I'd be watching for support at the monthly pivot at 21.85. RTY, we don't have an obvious pattern here, but you'll notice this is the big support level here, this is the big support level here. I'd be looking for a test of the big support level on RTY potentially, and that would be down in the 2000 area. On YM, YM, we actually had a head and shoulders and it broke down and it failed. I'm not thinking this is a head and shoulders, although it does look more like a head and shoulders on the diet chart. But we do have a very obvious target area here. Once we get through the monthly pivot, testing now at 43.317, this would have a target down at about the 41,600 area. Looking at DAX and the STX, I was saying in my pre-market videos that and on my chart notes that really I was watching resistance at the monthly pivot here, and we went up to it, we tested it, and we failed there again, and we've come down, retested the low on ESTX and got a little lower than that on DAX. I'm definitely wondering about the bear scenario here. Let's have a look and see how that looks on the bigger picture charts. Okay, right. First thing to say is the main and very obvious support level here to be watching initially is not any of these pattern support trend lines, but it's really the daily middle band. I've got that on SPX at 59.50. I've got that on ES at 59.59. And that's the June one. Sorry, I updated and moved over to the September chart, but obviously I didn't update the... There we are. All right. So I've got that now at 6,012. So that is what I'm looking at here. Really, I'm looking for a move down here into this this support here. We will see. I quite like the move down here. I'm not really looking for anything major, but we do have some okay looking patterns here now. This, it's mainly the resistance trend lines that are looking pretty good here, but you can see we've got a 1, 2, 3, and that is enough to give us the support trend line, which has now broken, and we've got a potential for a decent retrace here. I'm not really looking for much more than this move down to 57.60 area, but if we were to see obviously this Iran thing really take off, then obviously that can have a very significant impact. Okay, looking at the Qs, I'm looking at daily middle band support. I've got that at 524.99, so 525 in effect. And here we've got another nice resistance trend line, 1, 2, 3, overthrow and break. I've drawn a little head and shoulders here, but I'm not really watching this particularly closely. I'm mainly watching just basically to see if it can make it down to this support level here, which I've got in the 505 area. Okay, looking at Dire, there we've got daily middle band support at 424. We actually closed below it today. It's the only one that's showing some serious damage on the daily middle band, and we've closed below it for the last couple of days. Don't know whether it's really going to follow through, but if it does, we've got a potential little head and shoulders here. I think it's a bit too large. It's not as much too large, disproportionately large as it is on YM, but I've not really updated it from the original head and shoulders that broke down. There is a potential head and shoulders which would be better here if it wasn't the fact it was larger. But we have obviously got the same big support level I've got here down here at 414, and again decent resistance trend line, 1, 2, 3 overthrow. And the resistance trend line, you only really need one decent trend line, because that will give you the other one, even if you haven't got the points on it. Okay, looking at IWM, we've got the daily middle band at 207.97. We've been testing it for the last couple of days, 3 out of the last 4 actually, and we might see a breakdown. If we do, I've got a head and shoulders forming here. Which would have a target pretty close to the obvious target area, which I've got in about the 199 area. That's a nice little setup. We don't have that on the RTY chart, but it looks pretty nice here, so I have that marked that one in. Okay, looking at DAX. DAX, the sell signal. Hang on, wait a second. Looking at DAX, right. We've still got a weak RSI 14 sell signal fix, the RSI 5 sell signal made target, and we've got a possible RSI 5 buy signal brewing. And this has actually seen quite a lot of weakness over the past week. Not entirely sure why that is, but I think the Europeans have been very much outperforming the US markets this year, so maybe it's just a reaction to that. In terms of Nikkei, this has been outperforming for the last few days and has actually made some higher highs. Still wondering about a move up here, and I'm still wondering about this inverted head and shoulders on IWM, which has obviously broken up with a target at a retest of the all-time high at 24304. If we get down, let's have a look at the big support level here. I've got that big support level in about the 199 area, and the right shoulder low here, I've got here at 199.10. If we go below that, the inverted head and shoulders is invalidated. But to be honest, we can reach this trend line here without going below. But there's not a lot of play in it because that trend line is in about the 199.18 area, 19 area. Not far above 119, but you could reach that or get into that area without actually breaking that. I would be disappointed to see that broken because that is the main pattern, the only real pattern for the bullish scenario. Which I would love to see play out. But the thing is, there is another thing to consider here, which is that if we spend a few days retracing, and then we're losing window here because we have a credibility window. And the credibility window is the more news that comes in that's bad, and we're going to see more news that is bad. Because actually, it's hard to get an economy right and get it growing properly and keep it on the straight and narrow and keep inflation under control. It's not hard to mess one up, or at least traditionally in my experience from watching economies for quite a while, it's not that hard to screw it up. If you have someone who really doesn't know what they're doing, then they can mess it up. if they're very determined to do things which they really shouldn't be doing. And really, we've been seeing a lot of that in the US this year. I'd be very, very surprised if that doesn't have a significant impact. Now, that impact may not be that we go into full recession in the US, but we might. The Fed, Jerome Powell was talking earlier today, I think, and he was talking about basically, saying there were big headwinds and these were new because he wasn't looking at these now last year. Everything basically as a result of government policy. And so he was looking at basically growth coming down to 1%. And inflation going up to 3%. I don't really have a strong opinion on inflation because obviously a slowing economy tends to pull back inflation as well. But Jerome Powell is clearly thinking that we might see some stagflation this year, i.e. basically high inflation and slowing growth. And he could be right. We will see. Personally, I think that I don't really have an opinion on the inflation, but I think the growth may be rather optimistic. Exports are actually a very large part of the US economy. It's not as large as it is for a lot of other countries, but still pretty large. It's something like a quarter of the economy. And really, they're going to be taking a hit. So we shall see. All right, great. Let's have a look at DX and the currencies. Okay, now we saw a breakup from this declining resistance trend line, but I am thinking a bear flag might be forming here. And I'm thinking that in significant part because a bull flag appears to be forming on the euro. And that may be overthrowing or either overthrowing or turning into a channel. Nah, overthrowing. Okay, but I think this may be underthrowing slightly before it goes breaks up and retest the high. So we might be about to see a retest of the low on DX. But we're in a huge inflection point here, and I'll be talking about this. So I've been watching the currency pairs for clues. GBP USD has actually got a double top here, which has already broken down. And a possible larger double top, which is also now breaking down. I haven't drawn any arrows for it here, but if we can break and convert the monthly pivot, I've got the target down about the 1.32 area, plus or minus. Okay, USD/JPY, this appears to be a consolidation triangle. I'd be leaning bearish on this, but not strongly. I think these quite often just go the other way. So they're not that easy to call direction on. And actually, if I was going to look at the obvious waves here, and this isn't a great classical triangle, but it would be A, B, C, D, E, that would actually have an upward lean. We'll see how it goes. It depends where you count the first wave from. You could count it from there, of course, in which case it's A, B, C, D. We'll see. It's A, B, C. Yeah, I'd be questioning whether that's complete. We'll see. All right, USD CAD, we're seeing a bit of a breakup. We've got a possible 60-minute sell signal brewing here, but I am wondering about a possible IHS forming. No real bottoming pattern at the moment. Australian dollar, we've got a decent-looking double top, and NZ, we've got a decent-looking double top, which you can see is just now starting to break down. Okay, let's have a look at the bigger picture charts on US dollar. Now, US dollar, you can see we've got a nice looking little level top here, but we're hitting a big inflection point. After we made this high here, obviously I drew in this flag support trend line. It was dotted at that stage, but we came down and hit it here, and now we saw a rally, and then now come down and hit it again. Now this is obviously at this stage a confirmed bull flag. That doesn't mean it's going to break up. It will break up about 70% of the time, and it'll break down about 30% of the time. So the question is, which one's it going to be? If we go double bottom, then a sustained break up over about 102 takes us back to about the 106.5 area, and most of the way back up to flag resistance. Is it possible that we could see a retest of the high at 114.75? Honestly, over the years, I've seen some wild retests for no particular reason. So in the context of what I've seen in the past, yeah, definitely possible. Likely? I don't know, but definitely possible. Now, there are a couple of options if we don't break up directly from here, and I would note that we've got a possible RSI 5 buy signal brewing on the daily and a possible weak RSI 14 buy signal brewing on the daily, on the weekly chart, both of which are leaning towards the wrong side. Nothing really on the daily charts, but if we see further downside, then at that stage it may well just be a bullish underthrow. What I'd really be watching is this trend line here. This is the main rising megaphone support. I've got that in the 96 area, and if we see a break below that, then this megaphone breaks. That doesn't mean we wouldn't go back and retest the high, and we'd still need a reversal pattern. And really, I'm not seeing an awful lot of alternatives, but it could be that we'd break down directly, and that's because in this situation I have seen the flag itself breaking the other way and becoming the topping pattern. So in that case, we would then have a setup here which would be basically looking for about the 80 area. And I've seen that happen before, and that could happen here. So I'm watching that with great interest. I'm not making any assumptions. We'll see how it goes. All right, looking at bonds. Bonds, we've got on ZB. I was saying the other day when we had this bit of a breakup that this was either a very ugly inverted head and shoulders breaking up, or this was just a larger flag preceding a breakdown. And I've got to say, looking at the charts carefully today, I'm still leaning towards the flag option. On the 10-year yields at N, we've got, sorry, on the 10-year bonds at N, we've got just a breakdown from the flag, and I think we may be just consolidating before going down and make that target. Now let's have a look at the bigger picture charts on bonds. Okay, TYX. This looks vaguely like a bull flag forming and a little double bottom here on TNX. I'm looking at the sorry, I haven't actually run an hourly chart on TYX yet. So on TNX, on the daily chart, this looks like a triangle. It's not a bad looking triangle, actually. So next obvious target would be this trend line here. Hard to count where this would be exactly. But this might be wave D, and then pull back and break up if it continues being a nice classical triangle, and we've certainly got one very nice classical trend line. Looking at the hourly chart, again, short term, this looks like a triangle, and this would normally be a bullish triangle. So that would be leaning towards a breakup. Looking at TLT, on the daily chart, that's not a double bottom, it's too large. On the hourly chart, this looks like a bear flag forming. It's an expansion of the original bear flag, but it still looks very, very like a bear flag. A bear flag is leaning down. If the yields are leaning up and bonds are leaning down, then obviously that's not going to be great for CB as and when it breaks. We will see how that develops. Okay, let's have a look at oils. Now, oils have had a very interesting week. Obviously, we had the Iran invasion. We had a big spike up. We then had a big reversal there and came down a long way. And we actually had a double top that broke down, but that's pretty much rejected and failed. So I've taken the arrows off that because at this stage I'm considering it failed, and we're probably heading back up into a retest of this high. Looking at heating oil, we've already retested the high and gone significantly higher. On RBOB, gasoline, we retested the high, possible double top here, set up here, but not a great deal to say that it's likely. NG, we've come out of what was in effect a triangle consolidation. And we have broken up out of it. Now, I've got possible trend lines here, resistance trend lines at 415 and 425, but I've got more to say about this on the daily chart, so let's go look at that next. Okay, oil first though. Oil, we've got a possible weak RSI 14 sell signal brewing. We've got a possible weak RSI 5 sell signal brewing. And on here, we've already made a higher high because this is basically the continuous chart for oil. Now, do we have an obvious trend line target here? Yes, we do. I've got it at about 72.3. And this is the chart I've been leaving, the channel I've been leaving on the charts for months because it was just a nice pattern. And a nice pattern is one with a decent chance of delivering. So while I was expecting to see this break down, I've been talking about the possibility it might go the other way and head back to this trend line. We're pretty close to it, and I think there's a decent chance we're going to hit it. Looking at heating oil, no current negative divergence there. Here, we've got a potential double bottom or part formed inverted head and shoulders, which I'm watching with great interest. On gas oil, no obvious reversal pattern here, no obvious divergence, but obviously looking pretty nosebleed levels on the daily RSI 5. I'm leaning towards this going higher. and we'll see how it goes. Right, looking at natural gas. Natural gas, I've got no negative divergence here, but in effect, looking at it, we had in effect what was a triangle here. And it's obviously broken up. Now, I'm looking at it as a triangle. I'd be leaning towards it having a target back up at a retest of this high here at 4.59. Now, if we find resistance at 4.15 or 4.25, then maybe that'll hold it. And I wouldn't say triangles are necessarily the most reliable for making a target of this magnitude. But nonetheless, if we get over 4.25, the next obvious level would be to go and retest 4.59. So we shall see how that goes. All right, great. Let's have a look at metals. Okay, GC. GC, I've got a couple of minor concerns here. I think we've obviously, on the bigger picture, we've broken up from a flag, and I'm expecting to see a retest of the high. And I've not seen anything much change that. But we do have a load of negative divergence developing on the SI daily chart, which has me a little concerned. Now, we had a 60-minute sell signal. That's made target. Didn't do a great deal of retracement, and I have got targets to the upside, but I am watching that negative divergence and aware that obviously it might start turning into sell signals, which I'd have to take more seriously. Looking at palladium, we've got a little double bottom which is broken up with a target in about the 1090 area. I'm waiting to see if it gets back over the weekly pivot. On platinum, we've gone higher. This no longer looks like a double top, and we don't have any negative divergence here. Platinum is on a tear. This has been one hell of a move down here from 875, and it's still going. At the moment, I'm not seeing anything compelling saying it's about to turn around. HG, we came down, we tested megaphone support, we broke down through it slightly, and we may be forming the right shoulder on a head and shoulders, in which case we've been pretty close to the ideal right shoulder high. We will see. If we see a breakdown, I'd be looking for a retest this low here in about the 4.47 area. Okay, let's have a look at those on the bigger picture charts. All right, gold. Gold, we've still got a daily RSI 14 sell signal fixed, but it's very old, and I've more or less started ignoring it at this stage. We've got, we're holding above the daily middle band, which I would like to see hold as support. I've got that at 33.50. We've got a nice flag, it's broken up, and the obvious next target is a retest of the all-time high at 3,500. It may be that concern over the Iran war is going to deliver that. I'm a little surprised it hasn't delivered it already. Right, looking at silver. Silver, I've got a nice looking setup here, and I've got resistance up here in about the 39 area. I'm liking that, but we've got an RSI 14 sell signal fixed. Actually, sorry, these are fixed. And we've got an RSI 5 sell signal fixed, and I am wondering about some retracement here. I don't have an obvious trend line here. If we do see some retracement, I would just be looking for a better retracement. But what I have seen on strong trends in the past, and at the moment this doesn't look like a particularly strong trend, but I have seen silver just maintain negative divergence for a long period until the trend actually ends. That could happen here too. Looking at palladium, palladium, not really got an awful lot to say on palladium actually. It's been inching upwards, and there's no reason to think it won't inch a little higher. On platinum, we've seen a sizable break out of this 2-year consolidation, and this has really been on a tear higher. Is this high by historical standards? I got to go with no, not particularly. Although, to an extent, we've certainly spent long periods at lower prices. But I'm liking some upside here, and I am wondering about a bear flag here. And that bear flag could be A, B, C, maybe get us up into the 1550 or 1600 area. We shall see. All right, looking at copper. Copper, no current negative divergence. I'm leaning towards the downside. We've got quite a lot of support here that's holding so far. I'm particularly looking at the 50 DMA at 4.69, and below that we've got the 200 DMA at 4.46. If we are going to see this double top start to play out and deliver targets a long way lower, those two levels are going to have to break. So we'll see. All right, looking at GDX, we've gone a bit higher. We've got some sell signals on here and GDXJ, which have reached the possible near miss target. There's definitely a setup maybe for some consolidation here. I'm not really seeing much compelling in the way of seeing a larger retracement, so we'll see. All right, great. Let's have a look at the other commodities. Right, coffee. I was thinking this might be a double bottom forming, but it's not. It's gone too far low, and it no longer looks like a double bottom. Also, we've managed to go significantly lower without setting up any positive divergence. So I'm treating this as an expanded into a falling megaphone, and the next obvious trend target would be this trend line here in the 312 area. All right, looking at sugar. Again, we've got an expansion. I'm drawn in a possible trend line here for a move down into the 16 area. Obviously, we've got a bigger picture head and shoulders here, which I'll be going through again, which is broken down with a target in the 8 to 9 area, so this could go down a lot. CC, still leaning towards seeing a retest of this low, and we are not far away from getting that. On CT, this is no longer a potential inverted head and shoulders. If it is a bottoming pattern, it is a double bottom. And actually, sorry, the double bottom resistance should be here. So wait and see if that will deliver. I quite like that on the daily chart, but we'll have a look at that when we get to it. Lumber, we finally formed a decent resistance trend line, so we've got a pretty nice looking rising megaphone here. Next obvious target within the megaphone would be the megaphone support, currently in about the 598 area, and that looks like a bear flag. So if we break down, then I'd be looking really for a move down into a retest of this low in the 565 area. Looking at wheat, we had a double top that broke down and rejected hard, and it's broken up through the top of this range, and it's continued going higher. More to say about this on the daily chart. Looking a bit nosebleed high on the RSI on the hourly chart. On corn, this looks like it's rejecting. We had a little light test, it broke up, and it looks like it's rejecting back into the low, and it hasn't quite made it yet, but it's got very close. I'm treating this as a potential double bottom in the making, but we could obviously continue down. On soy, we had a little double top that broke down here and rejected back up into the high. Now we could have a larger double top here, and we've still got a 60-minute sell signal fixed. Would I be astonished to see this go higher? No, and there is a very obvious target up here, because the next obvious target and the flag target for this original flag that broke up would be a retest of this flag high here at 1082. Looking at soybean oil, potential little level top here, again 60-minute sell signal fixed, again pretty strong action here. Looking at live cattle, we've got a rising wedge that's broken down. This looks like a bull flag forming at the moment, and it might be. Lean hogs, I've been looking for a breakdown from this rising wedge, but so far we've only been seeing breaks up. Waiting to see if this will actually follow through to the upside, or whether we might be expanding into a larger pattern. We shall see. We've got a 6-minute sell signal fixed here, but again, that hasn't been particularly influential so far. Okay, let's have a look at the bigger picture charts on those. Coffee obviously is at nosebleed levels historically. We could be forming a bull flag here, or this could just have topped with an ugly double top. If so, now that we're down to 320, and if this isn't a bull flag, I'd really be thinking about this getting down into about the 2 area. So that would be down here, and not a bad match with where it's been historically. Don't know if it can get that far, but that's much more in line with where this is traded on the longer term. We shall see how that goes. Short term, no positive divergence. And we did have a bit of positive divergence here, and we haven't had it. That's usually a sign that it's not about to turn up. Could this be a flag? Yeah, I'll draw that for you. So hang on. But yes, this could be a flag. Could it be a good flag? I don't think I could find a good flag on it. But if it was a flag, I'd be looking for that. So I'd be looking for a possible support in the 3.1 area. We'll see if we get it. Okay, great. Sugar, you can see the big head and shoulders, which is broken down, and we've not seen a reversal back up so far. We're still on a monthly RSI 14 sell signal, which is getting close to the possible near miss target. On the weekly chart, no current divergence. Again, just another picture of the same head and shoulders. I did draw in a wedge here as a possibility, but we went through it. There might be other options for a support trend line here, but at the moment, mainly it's about the head and shoulders. On sugar, we've got a possible weak RSI 14 buy signal brewing. Sorry, RSI 14 buy signal. Nothing on the RSI 5. Nothing really compelling suggesting we're about to break up, but one of the trend lines I've drawn in as possibilities being tested, but that is far from the first time on this downtrend. Okay, looking at cocoa, again, kind of high by historical standards. Might be leaning towards the downside, but I've got a nice support trend line here, and I've got that in about the 94.50 area. If that holds, then this can definitely go up. If it breaks, then that potentially is opening up more downside. And as I said, by historical standards, this is pretty rich. Okay, wheat. We've been seeing a pretty strong week here, and I'm wondering whether this might be a nested double bottom. We didn't quite make the full retest of this low, but it's really not a bad looking little nested bottom. Double bottom resistance would be at 617.25. In effect, the first double bottom would take us up to resistance on the larger double bottom, which is in the 720 area. Now, I have been assured that there's too much wheat around for this to play out, but nonetheless, you've got a falling wedge, you've got a nice bottoming pattern. You got to wonder. And so far, we're seeing some strength. So I'm giving the pattern setup the benefit of the doubt. Certainly, this is a bullish looking pattern setup, no question. Looking at the daily chart, no current negative divergence, we will see. Corn. We've got a flag which is trying to break down here with a target at a retest this low here at 385. It might make that. We've got a possible weak RSI 5 buy signal brewing on the weekly. On the daily chart, we've got an RSI 5 buy signal that's fixed. Didn't quite make the possible near miss target. It's a bit thin, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this go back to retest the low. We shall see. Okay, soybeans. Soybeans have been pretty strong, and actually, I did say that of the rising wedges on the three grains, this was the only one that hadn't broken up, and as you can see, it's broken up. So, in terms of the flag here, we haven't actually broken over it, and this could be a bear flag. Next obvious target would be this trend line here, which I've got in about the 108.6 area, and watching that with great interest. Looking at cotton, on the weekly chart, we've got a falling wedge here too, but this one hasn't broken up. But of course, this isn't a grain; this is a soft. So, watching to see whether this does break up. But at the moment, we've just been basically ticking off 1 week after another. I think, what's it, 5 weeks? These look like little tombstones as we've been going down under the daily middle band. The weekly middle band. So at the moment, it's lost in space. We will see. If we get some action, the next obvious trendline target would be this trend line here, which I've got in about the 71 area. Looking at lumber, this looks like a sizable bear flag, and we'll see how that goes. Now, in terms of how that flag looks on here, hang on, bear with me a moment. I'll just have a quick look at that. Obviously, lumber, I'm not that happy with the way I'm able to chart it at the moment. And it's a bit low volume. I could just stop charting it, but I've actually always found lumber a bit interesting. It's done some wild things in the past. So this could be a flag, yes. Certainly on the hourly chart, it looks an awful lot like a flag. We will see how it goes. All right, great. In that case, I think that's a wrap. I will catch you guys again on Sunday. And everyone have a great holiday and take care. All right. Cheers.